We're getting back on track here with Kathryn and Emily, but as you know, we won't stay there for long because this is the Going Off Track podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to the Going Off Track podcast. I'm Kathryn, that's Emily, and welcome to Bahrain. We are not starting at the season in Bahrain, but we are going to Bahrain anyway, and
we're finally going to know how teams are going to be this year. Four races in.
Yeah, and I mean, we've only talked about Japan being the race, and then it wasn't the race for a lot of reasons, which you can listen to or watch in our Japanese Grand Prix reaction, where we react to everything that didn't happen in Japan, because nothing happened in Japan. And now we're going to go to Bahrain, which will hopefully be a more exciting race.
But because it's the Going Off Track podcast, and, you know, it wouldn't be us if we didn't talk about things that were not really relevant, I do want to take a second and go back to Japan.
Yeah.
Not like trying to stretch the episode, but I read a really interesting article on how, like, F1 is outgrowing tracks, and it's like, we've outgrown Monaco, we've outgrown Suzuka, and I'm like, no, we haven't, we love Suzuka. But then I went back and I thought, and I was like, no, maybe we have. The only excitement comes from horrible weather and like near-death experiences, and that's why it like there's some sort of excitement because strategy changes in the safety cars. But yeah, as much as it's one of our favorite, I think we like it because of like the fans and what happens in Japan, how, you know, good of an F1 Grand Prix they put on. But the race itself we may have outgrown it, which is kind of why Bishop's dinner. Check it off. Which is why I kind of like the idea of this like rotating regional track thing.
Which we've talked about many times, where instead of going to the same tracks every year, we're going to start going to the same regions every year, and we're going to go to different tracks within that region. So one year in Asia, it's going to be Japan, China. 1 year in Asia, it's going to be China, South Korea. 1 year, it's going to be Japan, Malaysia, something like that. And then in Europe, we're already going to see this in the Spa contract extension is the first one that's going to be doing this. Is Spa has extended to like 2030, 2031, but it's not going to be on the calendar, I believe, in 2028. So
I think there's 2 years that it skips. I can't remember which ones though. But yeah,
not back-to-back year. And Spa's not the track that I would do it at. Spa is one of the tracks that I would keep full-time, which I've also said before on the pod. But this is definitely where F1 is moving to, especially because so many countries are so interested in getting, you know, an F1 race. Like Alex Albon before Suzuka went to Thailand and met with the Thai government because they're basically putting together a memo of understanding with F1 saying we're going to explore what it would be like to host a street race in Bangkok. So all of this is happening in so many other countries, you know, South Africa, Turkey, Rwanda, all these different places.
India, Argentina, like they all want to bring races back because these are all countries that historically have had races, have since, you know, given up their slot on the grid or on the schedule. But no, I think we need some variety. Change it up a little bit. Bring back Malaysia.
Please bring back Malaysia. But I saw somewhere, I think like a recommended YouTube video popped up for me that like even Indianapolis wants F1 back. Indianapolis is probably not going to get F1 back, even though the circuit is still F1 rated.
Yeah, but you can't have another race in the. I'm not Chicago street race. Give me a Chicago street race before you give me Indianapolis.
Yeah, we don't need to go back to Indianapolis. We already saw what happened in Indianapolis when Indianapolis was at its most absurd in 2005, which we did a whole episode on, which is linked above or in the show notes. But F1 has never been more popular, and so it's now just a matter of like, where is it going to fit into the calendar? So as we've said, as we see the next rounds of contract extensions, obviously Zandvoort is unfortunately going to be leaving the calendar after, this year? Next year?
It might have one more year. Honestly, I'm not that sad to lose Zandvoort, though.
I really like Zandvoort as a track and as a race, but it's not the worst one to lose, but it'll be interesting to see as the F1 calendar evolves throughout the next decade, 2 decades, oh my God, is what tracks are going to be on and what tracks are going to be off.
Yeah. Anyways, not to sidetrack us from Bahrain because, so exciting to finally see some racing. But I just thought that was interesting. And it's because normally we say like Imola, and Monaco we've outgrown. We can ditch Imola, we can't ditch Monaco. But now it's like, oh, have we also outgrown Suzuka? I think it's going to be really interesting when we go to the new regulations and the cars are smaller, which allows for more overtaking. But we'll have to see. Again, never talking about what's currently happening because this is our podcast. So
no, but speaking of what's currently happening and kind of balancing the edge on the Japan / Bahrain kind of transition,
teetering the line.
Something really interesting is immediately after the race in Japan, it was announced that Ryo Hirakawa, who is the Alpine reserve driver who drove for Jack Doohan, and we don't know why he drove for Jack Doohan because Jack didn't need to vacate his car for a rookie session, but Ryo Hirakawa, who was one of the 800 Alpine reserve drivers, just left Alpine to go to Haas. I'm just like,
but this is like not surprising. This is just like another, chapter in the Alpine
revolving door of nonsense
book. It's just Alpine doesn't have their house in order. We've known this for years. I'm just waiting for Spa for them to fire their team principal. Like,
poor Ollie.
It's literally a nightmare, and this has zero surprising to me. Like, honestly, I think Hirakawa did really well, and they're like promising him X, Y, and Z, or like saying whatever. And I think he just doesn't want to be part of it. Like, I feel like moving to Haas is a very stable
thing. I mean, it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. And for leaving Alpine, I think Hirakawa he's older. He's in his early 30s.
Right.
So he's not in the same age. I mean, he's closer to age with like Pierre, but everyone else is really, really young and really like fresh and new to the sport. Also, he's Japanese. Ayo Komatsu, the team principal, is Japanese. They have the really close ties to Toyota Gazoo Racing, which is a Japanese, outfit. I believe that Hirakawa also has ties with Gazoo. So like it makes so much sense. And also they do need a reserve driver at this point. Right. So it's really just going to be battling out between Franco Colapinto, who was our, late season standout, who left Williams to become the Alpine reserve driver, and Paul Aaron, who just graduated from F2. And they both did testing of previous cars, or TPCs, in Monza on the day of the Japanese Grand Prix, which doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't, except it definitely does mean that they're like waiting to pull the plug on Jack Doohan.
Which
we definitely knew. And the other thing that I've been seeing is Oliver Oakes, who is the team principal at Alpine, is in this really terrible position where he's trying to convey all of this stability and say, Jack is staying, Jack's our guy. But then you have Flavio Briatore, who's actually the man in power at Alpine, who's like, no, if I could have gotten rid of him after he crashed the car, I would have gotten rid of him after he crashed the car. So there's this, it's a hot mess, but
it's
Franco
a contest of who's calling the shots at Alpine, and it's the dumbest thing. They need to get their house in order. It's a disaster.
It's like, even when you have a situation like you have Andrea Stella, who's the team principal, and then you have Zach Brown, who's the CEO of McLaren, but they have very specific roles, and you don't see Zach like publicly overruling Stella.
I mean, you also have two very different personalities looking at McLaren. Like, Stella's going to be the man who's in the background just being like, yes, so happy to be here. I'm so glad we did such a good job. And Zach's like, we won! Like Flavio, and I don't know, Oakes as well, but it seems like there's definitely a fight for power right now and like who's controlling it. And I feel like regardless of who you put in as team principal, Flavio's not going to be happy, and he's going to keep like pulling the reins and trying to control what's happening. So until they figure that out, or they get an extremely submissive team principal who's just going to be a puppet, like nothing's gonna change.
Right, exactly. And that goes to like the Alpine Renault board needs to like decide who is actually in charge here. Is it Oliver Oakes or is it Flavio Briatore? Obviously it is Flavio Briatore, but somebody's got to give the memo to Ollie so that Ollie can leave and go back to running his own. He's also still running his own team that he has in the lower series, but they just need to let everyone know that he's in charge and that he's also going to be in charge of the messaging, because you can't have Oliver, saying things like, oh yeah, the plan was always for Esteban. I mean, you can, but it looks really bad because it's like,
right. But I don't think they care. I mean, they don't.
They don't, but it looks really bad.
Yeah, but anyway, I think they're beyond the optics of it.
Clearly, they're far beyond the optics. But anyway, that's what's going on at Alpine. It's a hot mess. Colapinto and Aaron drove the 2023 Alpine car and in Monza, and it really just means they're probably preparing for a Colapinto in Monza moment in the 2025 car. But right now, it's just they're keeping them fresh. They're getting Aaron valuable experience outside of an FP1 rookie driver appearance, and we have a lot of those that we'll talk about for this weekend. But it's keeping Colapinto fresh and keeping him race ready, which, to be generous to Alpine, is a good thing, because you don't want Colapinto to come in completely dry, having not driven an F1 car since the end of last year.
Yeah.
So I'll give them that, but that's all I'll give them.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just like counting down the hours until we get an announcement that Colapinto is driving for Doohan, because that's just
the Colapinto announcement and then the Ollie Oaks getting fired at Spa announcement.
Yep.
So, counting down the days. Mark your calendars, everyone.
Well, with that, we can move into Bahrain. So I was thinking, I'm like, why does this feel so weird? It's because Bahrain was the opener last year. But it was moved because of Ramadan this year.
Yeah, Bahrain has been the opener since COVID. Since COVID, because Australia had been the opener. Then Australia, because Australia didn't happen in COVID, all that stuff. So then it became Bahrain, and then it was back to normal, quote unquote, with Australia this year. And yeah, it's so interesting that but this is also good because we go from not exciting race where the top six finished the way the top six started, to a race where Bahrain as a track over the last 5 years has averaged 60 overtakes per race.
So we should at least have some excitement.
Yeah.
I feel like we've been baiting this though, where it's like, oh, Australia, we have racing, that's going to be exciting. Oh, it's like a lot going on, but it's just like madness. And then we're like, okay, China. And then we're like, no.
China.
And it's like Japan. And we're like, no. And then we're like, Bahrain. And it's just gonna be like, no. But no, we have to have an exciting race here. There's going to be overtakes. I'm very excited.
Yeah. I mean, and not to say that Bahrain was the most exciting last year, because Max won by 22 seconds. He also completed a Grand Slam. So like he was gone, and it was just like everywhere else was the exciting part. I mean, we had P2 from Checo, P3 from Carlos. So we were sitting in this is the beginning of Carlos's like FU Ferrari campaign. We had the Valtteri Bottas stake 52-second pit stop, which was ridiculous. We had the post-race drama on the cool-down lap of Danny and Yuki fighting, and Danny calling Yuki an effing helmet. So there was so many things happen, but none of which were related to the fact that like Max was just gone.
Yeah, it was like Max was running his own race. But, I mean, I think that was to be expected last year, just because coming off of 2023 and how dominant they were.
Right.
Like, no one was able to catch up to Red Bull until, like, the end of the season when McLaren did it. But
yeah, I mean, it really didn't start until Miami when Lando won. And then all of a sudden, you start realizing that everyone is a lot closer. And then all of a sudden, McLaren just went on that tear. It looked like after Bahrain that this is going to be another season 2023. And then it was one of the most exciting seasons in years, leading to this year, which will also be one of the most exciting seasons in years.
Yep. Also, something that's really exciting this year in Bahrain is all of the rookie driver appearances. I feel like this is a lot this early, but recognizing there's more rookie appearances this year.
Right.
So we're actually going to see Hirakawa again. Imagine that.
Yeah. And the funny part is he's replacing a rookie who, in this case, isn't actually a rookie anymore.
So, Ollie Behrman.
Yeah. So the stipulations for a driver who needs to give up their seat for a rookie driver is you need to have driven fewer than 2 races going into the season. Ollie's had 3 F1 races in 2024. Therefore, he's still a rookie, but he has to give up his car for a rookie.
Interesting. So under this stipulation, Liam Lawson is not a rookie.
Liam Lawson is not a rookie. He will have to sit out 2 free practices, even
because he teeters the line of being a rookie or not. But
he does.
In this case, he's not a rookie. And
yeah, I mean, F1 has pretty much decided based on his driving performance in races that he's a rookie now, and that makes sense. And then Ollie is definitely a rookie. But yeah, so Ollie, this is Ollie's first FP1 appearance that he will be sitting out. There will be a second later this year, and then Ocon will also have two sessions. But Ollie is the only rookie who is actually supposed to sit out, whereas Doohan last week in Japan wasn't, and that was what was told to do it, and it was a bad idea. But anyway, Hirakawa, he's gonna drive. I'm actually kind of excited to see what he's going to be able to do in a different car. And the Haas has been favorable in Bahrain. They obviously, when they did their testing there a couple months ago, things looked pretty good. And then they got to Australia and Haas looked really bad. So that's why they had to fast track those upgrades that we got in Japan that allowed Ollie to have that great performance last week. So this will be really interesting to see what the Haas is going to look like in a track configuration that they're already familiar with and they're already successful with.
Yeah. And then Ferrari, you're gonna have to say these last names. I can't pronounce anything correctly.
So Ferrari will be trading out Charles Leclerc for Dino Beganovic, who is making his F1 practice debut. He's currently in Formula 2. He's, in the Ferrari pipeline. He finished 6th in F3 in 2024, and he was a Formula Regional Europe champion in 2022. So solid guy in the, in the stable, some Ferrari youth that they're bringing up. And so it'll be interesting to see how he performs going into, his first time in the big car.
Yeah. Oh, Princess George has to sit out for FP1. Yes. So Mercedes is putting Frederick Vesti in for George Russell. He's been a junior in their stable for a long time, hasn't he?
Yeah, since 2021, he's been a reserve driver for a couple years now. Obviously, Valtteri Bottas is the big name as a reserve driver. Yeah. You obviously Alpine proves you can have more than one, and so Vesti is the more quiet one. He races in some other smaller series that isn't just like single seater, but yeah, he was the F2 runner up in 2023. He's a big up and comer. He definitely got vaulted by Kimi Antonelli, and you're gonna see. The next driver that we have that's going to be in one of these rookie sessions has also been jumped over by some rookies over the years, which is also pretty common. Like there is a plateau that you can reach where your job as an F1 reserve driver is as close as you're going to get to an F1 car.
Yeah, and I think we've dropped enough hints. It's poor Felipe Drogovic for Aston Martin. He's just forever going to be their reserve driver because Fernando Alonso won't retire, and Daddy Stroll won't let his son out of the seat. He did really well in F2. He was F2 champion 2022, so very promising. But unfortunately, just can't quite get there to get his own seat.
Yeah, Drogovic is a very capable driver. His problem is that he doesn't have the financial backing, which is a very critical factor towards actually getting an F1 seat. Is you need that financial support to come in. I mean, look, Sergio Perez stayed at Red Bull so long because he had so much money coming into the team. And if you don't have that, that's another one of the reasons why you're probably that you could top out in a certain place, like being Aston Martin's forever and always reserve driver.
Yeah. Well, poor guy. Maybe he'll get there. Maybe not.
We'll see.
And last but not least, Carlos Sainz is taking a break for Luke Browning in the Williams. So last year in F3, he finished P3, and he's currently an F2 driver. So I feel like this is one of the guys with very little experience doing a rookie session. Really just kind of, getting the experience, letting them see how they do under these conditions. But this just goes back to a point that I've raised a million times of how nerve-wracking it must be to put one of these brand spanking new drivers in on a race weekend.
So fortunately for Browning, he was in Abu Dhabi doing a rookie session. Abu Dhabi late last year, he did a rookie session, so he's not completely new to F1. I'm just pretty sure.
So he's done one rookie session.
I mean, that's one more than Bogdanovic has.
That's fair.
But he is one of the younger ones. Browning and Bogdanovic, they just started F2, so they're like just getting to. Exactly. They're just starting their like real big careers. I mean, obviously getting to F3 itself is a big deal, and F2 is another, like, you're on the cusp unless you're in this current generation where it's like all these old people won't leave. But yeah, this is definitely, this is for the youth. This is also the point of these rookie sessions, is to get young drivers as much experience in an F1 car as possible. And this also helps with their super license points, which the more super license points you have, the easier it is to get you to F1, because you don't want that question looming over you if it's a question of, you have two drivers. Driver A is closer to his super license point than driver B, which is exactly what happened with Logan Sargent. Before Logan Sargent got to Williams, it was his contract with Williams was stipulated by having enough super license points, and if he like dumped it,
he was having to like jump in and get random sessions to qualify.
They gave him as many sessions as possible, because I think every 100 kilometers is, which is basically the length of a practice session, is a point. And then also there's a scale of how many points you get based on your finishing position in F2. Like the top 3 positions get the most points. They get 40, then it's like 30, 20, whatever. Yeah. And so depending on where you finish is how many other super license points you get, to the magic number of 40. So if you win, you're in. And that's where these sessions also come to play. And we've talked about like rookie drivers and the super license in a F101, which is also linked above and in the show notes.
Boom. Okay, well, those are all the changes for the seats this weekend.
It's FP1 that I am not.
FP1 that no one watches anyways.
I'm not going to be waking up at 4:30 in the morning to watch FP1.
No, but can I just say I'm so excited to be in Bahrain, where the race time is 10 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. Good golly, I am just over the moon.
This is a good race time for you. 8 o'clock in the morning is not terrible for me.
That's not bad.
But yeah, this is much better for you than the last couple of races that we've had. Because I am a night owl, but this has been tough for you.
I am not. Like, give me a 6 a.m. race over like a 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, I mean, we'll get those. We'll get a lot of those.
Well, I've just had the 2 o'clocks. I'm ready to be in Europe when it's like 6 a.m., 7 a.m.
No, it's not 6 a.m. It's 7 or 8, because it's 6 a.m. for me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Even better.
Good for you. I have to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning while running a summer camp just to watch Austria. Anyway, and by have to, I mean choose to.
I was going to say, you can always record it. That's what I do for Asia.
Not when I'm running a summer camp. Anyway, let's get into our predictions, because that's really all we have to talk about, because nothing's happened.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's going to be a hot one once again in Bahrain. So we're going from like maybe cooler temperatures in Japan to a little toasty in Bahrain. So I don't think anything will ever, give Singapore a run for its money, but it will be a hot one.
No, the humidity won't be as bad. I mean, throughout the weekend, it's going to be about 40%, which is, I don't know, that's kind of what I am dealing with right now, because it's getting hot again in Arizona, which is gross. But this will be one of the first, high heat challenges. And obviously the heat issue has been very prevalent, especially Qatar in 2023, any year in Singapore, period. But this will also be one of the weekends where the drivers will probably be trialing those. Some of them will be trialing the cooling vests, the ones that want to, and that are like, they don't want to deal with heat exhaustion. So that will be really interesting also to see. It's not mandatory yet. It's not that technology, whatever it is, also isn't ready yet for it to be mandatory, but it could be mandatory going into the new regulations. So we're going to see a lot of chatter about these mythical cooling vests and what they will do, what they mean, and how they're going to what it's going to do to impact the cars and the drivers' ability to drive, all of that. So that's going to be really interesting to see. And we might see them wear them in practices and not wear them in the actual race.
Yeah, that makes sense. But again, just working towards driver safety.
Yes, driver safety,
Love
very
to
important.
See it. All right, time for predictions. So 2025 Bahrain Grand Prix poll, who you got?
I'm pretty sure I went with Oscar again. I should put up my notes. Maybe if it's gonna load. I did go with Oscar again. So
did I.
I just feel like after Japan and after not being allowed to try to get at Max, Oscar
he's going for it.
He's going for it, and like at minimum, it's like, oh, it doesn't matter where he qualifies as long as it's ahead of Lando.
Exactly. That was my thought. My thoughts exactly. It's like he's gonna come back, not with a vengeance, because I mean he still did very well, but I think he's gonna be like, okay, I out-qualified Lando. Are you gonna treat me how you treated Lando last weekend? Yes or no? So I have Oscar
exactly
as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so going into podium, I have, because I have to, I have Max, Oscar, Lando.
Interesting. Okay. I have Oscar, Lando, and Charles. I know. Yes,
like
Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc. I just feel like with going to Bahrain where they tested, where they drove so many kilometers, I feel like Ferrari might have a less anonymous weekend. I know you're giving me the face, and like since when am I supporting Ferrari here?
No, I just think like everyone sandbags at testing. You don't know truly like what lap they're really.
It's less so based on lap. I haven't even looked at where like what the timings were. It's just I just feel like that's a race where it's easier to be successful in on pure pace.
That's fair.
And I feel like it's also a lot easier to not screw up there. I mean, Ferrari will try because Ferrari's really good at like doing the impossible, but I feel like that this could be a more front and like I think that Ferrari will be more relevant this weekend.
Okay. We will see.
We will see.
And I say this making the joke like as a Ferrari fan. So
right. So then what's your P10?
So my P10 is Isaac Hadjar. I think he's gonna do 2 weeks back to back with points. So
okay. So mine is actually Yuki, his former teammate.
Love.
I just think that like we're gonna get incremental improvements out of Yuki now that he's not at home anymore. He's not in Japan. He doesn't have to have that pressure on him of like be good for Japan, be good for Honda. And now he can just work on getting comfortable in the car. And he's one of the biggest. He and Liam are going to be the biggest question marks because they had a lot of experience in Bahrain driving completely different cars earlier in the year. Yeah. So this will be another one of those what's it going to look like for Yuki and Liam type of weekends. But I do think that we're going to see from Yuki, like it will be better, but it will not be up where Max is yet.
Fair. So kind of going off of what you're just saying about like testing and familiarity, I have for my big surprise of the weekend, I have a double Williams points weekend.
Ooh.
So I think Carlos is finally going to like punch it in and get some points.
Okay.
So I kind of flirted back and forth with like having Carlos's P10 and Hadjar's P10, but I think
Carlos will be ahead of P10.
Carlos will be ahead of P10, and that's like why Hadjar will kind of drop down because he was what, P8 in Japan? P9?
Yes. Yeah.
P8. Yeah, so he'll drop down a little bit. But what about you? What you got?
So mine is double points for Haas. I know.
That's like asking a lot. Do you know how many people they have to be ahead of?
Well, Ollie already finished in the points, and it's a matter of like Esteban needs to be better. And I think Esteban could be better at this track.
I love that.
I know.
We're both wrong, honestly.
I mean, we might both be wrong, but I think that you might have the edge. And like the way Alex,
I know I have the edge.
Well, I know you have the edge, but I just like the way that Alex is driving right now. Like Alex is just in command of that car. Yeah. And I'm just waiting for Carlos to get there too, because I think that Carlos will get to a point where he gets there.
I think that Carlos is going to do better here because this is where he tested.
Mm-hmm.
And he did so well in testing. I mean, he won like what, 1 or 2 sessions, or he was in the top 5 for every single session. So I think that he'll kick it into gear. But I was also reading an article on like why he's not performing, and they were like, this is how Carlos does it. Like, he takes a little bit to get comfortable with the car, and then it's like, boom, I'm killing it. Like, he did the same thing in Ferrari. He wasn't like perfect right away at Ferrari. It took him some time, and I think that's normal, which also like goes back and kind of contradicts everything we've been saying about like some of the drivers who were questioning if they should still stay in the car, let alone the rookies, and they need to get used to the car.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is what it is. I think Carlos has earned a little bit more respect than Doohan or Lawson, just based on what he's done. But yeah, I think this is the weekend that Carlos comes around and gets some points.
Yeah. I think that he is due. I mean, like, I know that we're just so used to him like in a Ferrari where it's like, you're in a Ferrari, you're gonna get points. Look at Ollie Behrman. Like, Ollie had to try really hard in Saudi Arabia to not get points. But I think that either way, it's still, I'm really excited to see which one of us is right.
Yeah. Also, speaking of Williams, they have more points through like what, 3 or 4 races than they did all season last year.
Oh yeah, yeah. And all of them but one of those points comes from Alex.
Obsessed.
Yeah.
Obsessed.
I think that Alex is like on pace for his most points since he was at Red Bull.
Which is perfect. He deserves it. He's such a great guy.
Yeah.
So, the oops of the weekend. So, who you got, Kathryn? Who's going to do a dumb?
My oops of the weekend is I forgot to pick an oops of the weekend. So
That's fine. You can piggyback on mine. Don't worry.
I'm gonna go with Mercedes. I don't know. I mean, I was wrong last week, but I'm. You too?
Well, I have more so George. Like, I think Kimmy's just, you know, gonna do Kimmy things. Kimmy's fine. But I think George is just, like, getting frustrated that he's not on podium because, like, you know, that's where he's expected and anticipated to be because he's great. And I think he's just gonna bin it or have a horrible weekend. So I think he's gonna be trying too hard and fail miserably.
Yeah, I think we're also due for a safety car. I mean, obviously, like, we're always due for a safety car, but Japan, this was the first race in Japan that we haven't had a safety car in multiple years, because usually there's been like at least a safety car at minimum or a red flag, and this Japanese Grand Prix had nothing. Yeah, I mean, it had Max being pursued for 53 laps by 2 McLarens, and just the slower McLaren was in front, but, you know, McLaren didn't think Oscar could beat Max, so I don't believe that, but whatever. Okay.
Anyways. Okay, so Bahrain, super excited to get like some exciting racing. Like Kathryn said, there's a lot of overtaking here. So I'm excited to wake up fresh,
leisurely morning,
watch some racing. So I'm excited. But before we depart, Kathryn, it is time to hit us with your fun fact. So what is your F1 fun fact for us for today?
So this fun fact is kind of a what could have been question. And this is back in 2012 when Lewis Hamilton was driving for McLaren. He was not thrilled with the McLaren pace. And his first thought, instead of looking at Mercedes, which is where he obviously ended up, is he was actually going for Mark Webber's Red Bull seat with Sebastian Vettel. So we could have had Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel teammates at Red Bull.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't see him and Christian Horner getting along very well.
No, I mean, it ultimately fell through probably for a lot of reasons. I'm sure that, you know, helmet wasn't his favorite either. But it was basically after it fell through, Bernie Ecclestone said, hey, why don't you talk to those people at Mercedes? And then Niki Lauda kind of came in and said, hey, you should come. And Niki Lauda was the one who convinced Lewis. But that's always been the big story. But the minor part of the story is that he almost went to Red Bull.
I didn't know that.
What would that have been like?
Honestly, for him and Seb to be teammates at Red Bull,
that would have been pretty cool.
Dang. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is a fun fact. Yep. Well, coming up next, we will have our Bahrain recap episode that will be out on Monday. But as for this episode, we're done. Thanks for going off track with us, guys.